Hi there. I'm here today to share with you my observations and try and pick apart the complex situation that the food industry is in today. Because this is such a big subject and I've got a lot of information to throw at you, I've kind of tried to break it down into 4 sections. So the first section is about Fair Share, who we are and what we do. The second section is why food is being wasted and the impact of that. And lastly, to try and get an answer out of it. Fair Share is a national charity. We work with the food industry to receive food from manufacturers and distributors before, and then we give it out to organisations that work with vulnerable people. There are 17 Fair Shares in Great Britain. Food organisations that work with vulnerable people, such as the Salvation Army, Women's Projects, Refugee Projects, Breakfast Clubs, food banks, become members of Fair Share. And then they cook meals, they give out parcels to people living in food poverty. On a national level, we give to 800 organisations. And here in the Southwest, we give to 80 in Bristol, Bath, Gloucester and North Somerset. We wouldn't operate without the dedication and hard work of our volunteers. And we work with students, professionals, retired, and over half our volunteers are or have been vulnerable. And we help to upskill them, give them accreditation to help them move on with their lives. When I tell people what I do and talk about food waste, halfway through the conversation they say to me things like, oh, so the food is bad, but it's still edible, it's still okay to eat, or oh, I know some people that go round to the back door of the supermarket and go skip diving, or think that we're freegans. All the food that we receive, that Fair Share receives, has not had the pleasure of sitting on a shop shelf. It's not been discounted because it's close to use-by date. So we work with suppliers, manufacturers and distributors, and all the food we got has not even got to a shop. Now, why is this? Okay, so a very current example is the Olympics. So millions and millions and millions of products had the Olympics all over it. Weetabix was telling us to eat our Weetabix and we'd get so many gold medals. There's still lots of these boxes down the distribution line. They will not be going onto the shop shelves because the promotion has finished. So things like the competitions, Red Nose Day. Other examples are labels that are not printed straight. They're not straight on the product. Outer boxes that hold inner boxes that then hold packets of Kit Kats, for instance. If the outer box is damaged, they will be wasted. Rejections due to not enough nuts or too many nuts or not sweet enough or too sweet. And one of the biggest things is surplus. So things are deemed to be too close to use-by date to be put into a supermarket. Dried products such as Weetabix, such as pasta and rice, most supermarkets won't have it on their shelves unless it's got longer than 3 months life on it. Now, in your little bags that I've given you, there's a little pot of olives. And I know you've all had lunch, but it would be really nice if you would open them and have a taste of those olives. Now, those olives, we had about 12 boxes of them, and they were en route to Sainsburys deli counter, where you go and you get your 50 or 100 grams of olives. And the reason why we got them is because the Sainsburys supermarkets they were going to, there were too many. They didn't think that they would sell them by the use-by date, and I think it's got the 1st of October on it, so it's a good life. In the Southwest, we receive between 6 to 8 pallets. Well, we work with 45 food industry partners. And these are the good guys. You know, these are the guys that are tackling food waste and are giving it to charities like us. So we received about 6 to 12 pallets from Sainsburys distribution. It's all packed up, and that's like walking around the chiller department in a Sainsbury's supermarket. So we get things like whole bries, we get boxes and boxes of your best cheeses that, you know, haven't tasted before. Trays and trays of organic whole chicken, joints of beef, pallets of hummus and yogurts, and a lot of Sainsbury's Taste the Difference. Now, Sainsbury's are not one of the bad guys. Sainsbury's are a fantastic company for us as a charity, and they fund us as well. So I'm not saying that that Sainsbury's are bad. But we're like a big wholesaler, and when I show people around our warehouse, they're just amazed at the quality and the type of food. Now, this is a massive shock. The food industry wastes 4 million tonnes of good food per annum. Food that has not got to a shop, food that is within use-by date and which is perfectly fit for human consumption. So to put that into perspective, a mini weighs a tonne, an elephant weighs a tonne, and that 4 million tonnes would fill Wembley Stadium 4 times over. Sorry, just the next slide. And you can see the amount of meals that 4 million tonnes creates. It's difficult to know, but research has shown that only 1% of that 4 million tonnes is given out to human consumption. So the rest is wasted. Last year, FareShare on a national level gave away 8.6 million meals. So let's just look at this slide here. 10 billion meals is wasted, and FareShare only gave out 8.6 million. So you can see the discrepancy there. I've been with FareShare for 5 years, and I still can't get my head around why this is happening. So let's try and pick it apart a little bit. The food logistics is a labyrinth, a system so confusing of protocols and procedures and systems, and lots of companies involved. So even though a product will have Sainsbury's or Waitrose written on it, it will go through so many different companies before it gets to a Waitrose shelf. So the ownership of that product is stretched really, really thin. And the responsibility of it is stretched thin. There's not really one company that's to blame, and there's not any one person to blame. When I speak to distribution managers or logistic managers or the lorry driver that delivers, they hate this waste. They don't want this waste to be taking place. One thing I am convinced, though, is that if it costs too much money to waste this food, then an alternative would be found. And we need government to get behind it. Now, in your bags, there's another little sample there. It does contain nuts, so please. It's flapjacks. This is a local company that we work with, and they make flapjacks for the Eurotunnel first-class carriage, and we get the rejects. So we get it on every couple of weeks, we get about 10 boxes, layers and layers and layers of different flavoured flapjacks. And maybe one of you can try and guess why we got this reject. The what? Nearly. No. Nearly. Sorry? They're gorgeous, yeah. They're too flaky, yeah. They're too flaky. That's why we got them, so they didn't hold together in a nice little perfect shape. Okay, most of this 4 million waste will go to landfill. And, you know, the UK is going to run out of landfill sites in the next 5 years. And the methane that comes off landfill. Now, government is pushing through a bill that food waste should go to anaerobic digestion. Now, anaerobic digestion breaks down waste and makes it into a fuel. So it's a renewable fuel, and it's very much favoured by the government. And yes, food that's not fit for human consumption is great to go to anaerobic digestion. That's a good thing. But the amount of energy that goes into producing food far exceeds the amount of energy that you can generate from it. And there will come a time that anaerobic digestion companies will pay for food waste. It's a money generator. And food companies will make money from their food waste. So you know what I'm going to say next, that charities like FareShare and others will be competing with anaerobic digestion companies to get food. And we can't afford to pay for the food. The environmental impact to produce 4 million tonnes of food and then to waste it is 18 million tonnes of CO2 emitted to the environment. It costs £83 to waste a pallet of food. Now, the cost of the food on that pallet must be at least 5 times that amount, and it's far too cheap. But of course, landfill prices will rise. They should rise. And what does that mean? That means that food prices are going to go up. And that brings me on to the next thing, which is food poverty. 1 billion people are hungry in the world today, and they could be lifted out of poverty by a third of the UK, Europe, and the USA's waste. 4 million people are hungry in the UK. And, we're seeing reports of today all the time at the moment that these are not, these are people who are working, but they're struggling to feed their children. Food banks, which are normally church-based and they give out food parcels for a week's provisions, they're growing faster than Tesco's right now. So what's the answer? You and me, if you all went out and told 2 or 3 people about this, what I've told you today, and you all started talking about it, and you all went onto social media, and we start this bubble of pressure on the government to pressurise the food industry to stop this waste. Food industry is a multi-million-pound industry. Surely they can I know they can come up with systems to stop this food going to waste, and it should be going to human consumption. There's a story that I'd like to quickly tell you, and it just showed to me the crime of food waste, and it's by Alain de Botton, and it's about the journey of a tuna from the Indian Ocean to a supermarket shelf in Bristol, and how this tuna is plucked from the sea by the fishermen. It's line caught, and then it goes to the filleting factory, and they can fillet a tuna in 3 minutes. And a lot of the fishermen and the filleters are widowers because they were on the boats when the tsunami hit. And then the tuna goes on to the airport, and the aircraft handlers put it onto the planes. And Alain describes how the aeroplane evokes aspect of the tuna with its gill-like air vents and its streamlined fins and its Piscean underbelly. And it comes across to the UK. And it gets put onto a chill lorry, and the lorry driver drives it through the night. And he works most nights, and he sleeps most days, and it ends in Bristol, and it gets put on the supermarket shelf, and they're tuna steaks, and it gets bought, and there's a picture of a little boy eating. A few months ago in our warehouse in Bristol, we had over £1,000 of tuna steaks in packets. And the reason why we got them was because the barcode would not work on the sticker on the outside of the packet. Now, luckily, that tuna went to go and feed 250 people through an organisation that we give. But, just think if it didn't, and all those people that were involved, and how it would end up in landfill. It's a real shock, and it's a crime. And the subject today is shock future, but this is a shocking present-day situation.